All right, we're going to go live today. This is the AI Assisted Organization podcast. So we're trying this on various platforms. You should be able to follow us on LinkedIn. So this is going to be a podcast as well, clearly, but we thought we'd just stream it live as we record it. We tend to do these things in one take where we can. So here we go. This is the AI Assisted Organization podcast hosted by myself, Piers Linney, my co-host and co-founder of Implement AI, Dr. Alok Shukla. Well, I'm back in the UK. I made it through all the Baltic states, Poland, Tomorrowland, and all the Nordic states in the van conversion, which was fun, but quite tiring as well. So it's good to get back at it. Have all the sort of the kit to get on with it. So we've got a lot to cover again. So there's been quite a bit of sort of ongoing news. So this podcast, if you haven't listened to it before, we focus on AI for business news, basically the stuff you need to know if you're in business, you're running a business, or thinking of even starting a business, is what you need to know about artificial intelligence to sort of support you to build what we call an AI assisted organization, which is one where you and your workforce, your colleagues, you're augmented with AI agents, software agents, but in the future, not too far away, and we'll talk about it, embodied AI and robotics as well. Then we have a theme. So this theme this week it's a fascinating one. It's about our AI agents we're now equipped with memory. So if you think about having a workforce that has perfect recall and it can use that information in real time for customer service support or for engaging customers or reactivating or trying to reduce churn, then it's incredibly powerful. So we're going to talk about and focus on that a little bit. So let's get into the news. So OpenAI, one of the things that's quite frustrating sometimes if you've used either directly in ChatGPT or through the API is try to create long form content. Now, it's often better if you're trying to sort of prompt and generate longer form documents is to use AI to sort of establish a kind of an outline, almost a contents, and then go through it section by section and tweak it and work on them and build the document up and create the document, a long form document. However, sometimes if you're given enough context and your prompts, good enough, you want to create long form documents. So OpenAI, their ChatGPT or their GPT-4o for Omni, which we've been using quite a lot, they've now extended the sort of the output, the conversation length to 64,000 tokens, which actually is quite. It doesn't sound like much, but it's actually a game changer. So we use Claude AI quite often for doing documents and sort of conversational stuff and even creating notes for things like this. So it's a bit of a game changer. It's a 16-fold increase from the previous limit. And that explains to me a lot why I've struggled with trying to get long out, but I tend to get like even 500 words, 1,000 words, and it kind of just runs out of steam. So it's been quite frustrating. So for you then, if you're in business then, this is a real leap forward in terms of your ability to create long form documents. So it can revolutionize how you can approach, things like, tender documents for bids, knowledge intensive tasks, decision making, and it improves to compete with Claude. And what we want to see is this ongoing competition, as long as it costs and it's affordable. So these things become better over time, which means that you can be more productive in your business.
Exactly, because this is just the memory, isn't it? Right. So it means you can obviously create the documents, but also analyze larger documents. And so having the ability to do bigger and bigger documents, or let's say multiple documents over a long period of time, that's where you can start to understand different trends and different things like this. So that's a great thing.
And not have to break them down as much, because that can be more time consuming. So again, you're seeing these things get better and better. However, it's always about the prompts, it's always about being able to prompt. We have an AI training academy, so understanding how to prompt so that you actually it's not garbage in, garbage out. The output is what you're expecting. Otherwise, a lot of people kind of give up on ChatGPT and using AIs because they don't really understand how to prompt, how to provide the input and the context to get the output you're expecting. Moving on. So NVIDIA, we're an NVIDIA partner, and we keep talking about robotics. So NVIDIA have now supercharged these sort of humanoid robots, essentially. And you're going to see more and more of these, and we're going to touch upon it again later in the pod with Figure AI's new announcements. So they've unveiled a suite of services. It's quite technical in terms of robotics and how you set these things up and create models for them. But essentially, they've got this sort of NIM, they call it NIM microservices, and this sort of cloud orchestration for robotics, because these things need to be able to communicate and work together and be orchestrated with other robots, but also existing systems that sit in CRMs or ERP systems. It can become incredibly complicated. And the idea, though, is that it reduces development time. So, if you take an order of your Tesla or your Boston Robotics or your Figure AI robot, it turns up. That's great, a nice bit of hardware. But how do you make it do what you want it to do to maximize value? And that's the complicated bit. And what NVIDIA are trying to do is to concertina and shorten that setup time, make it simpler, make it faster, and make it cheaper, which means that this thing will then permeate throughout organizations and industry a lot faster. So, again, note the speed. We talk about exponential curves all the time. Talked a lot about what we call services as software, the new SaaS. But now you're seeing robotics as a service. You're seeing that curve. And we have a curve we use quite a lot in our presentations, where we sort of say that real robotics is sort of 5 to 10 years out. Yeah, we might have to change that a lot down to 2 to 10 in terms of the speed at which this changes. That's quite interesting, and we're going to keep our eye on that. So moving on, a really interesting one. So if you use, I'm sure if you do anything in terms of creative, you've used Canva. I used to try and use Photoshop. I kind of gave up on it. I focused on Premiere Pro and Adobe, but Canva is an incredibly powerful tool, and they want to make sure that they remain relevant and a leader in this sort of ability, in this sort of creative market. So they've just acquired Leonardo AI. Haven't heard of Leonardo? It was a pretty good text to image, text to video, to some extent, more text to image model. So they've now acquired Leonardo AI, and they're clearly going to embed that into Canva. So you can have this sort of, let your creative juices flow and create images. We're going to talk about vector art and illustration in a minute, and then embed that into your designs and improve your designs over time. So that's really powerful. But I think in terms of the business angle on this, Alok, I think what you're going to see, you're not going to see lots of the big players consolidate, because I think the competition authorities are going to sort of, be quite, so keep an eye on that. But you're going to see a lot of consolidation in the sort of down the food chain, really. And this is the first sign of it, because these things aren't going to be cheap. I don't know if it's an acquisition or a merger. I'm not sure what the relative valuations are, but it's a significant step for Canva in terms of making sure that it consolidates its position, remains relevant and ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it wants to make sure people don't leave Canva to go to Midjourney or go to DALL-E or whatever like that, basically. And also for Leonardo, distribution is the key, right? You can have the best technology in the world, but if nobody's using it because other people are using other tools and other products. So I think you need both things. You need the capability, you need the distribution. So it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's a Microsoft model. It's a famous graph of Slack, which has the technology. Then you've got Microsoft with Teams that has the distribution, and it took over Slack in about, I think, 2-3 years from launch. So it's absolutely right there. But again, what this means is that, and we'll talk about it again in terms of vector art, is that the cost of creating, designs, imagery, using your brand in ways you want to, is going to zero almost. And the need for external support and assistance, somebody's got to do it clearly still, but the need to pay for someone who's an expert is kind of going away. Moving on. So Perplexity AI, I haven't heard of Perplexity. This is quite an interesting one. So they've kind of focused on, they want to reinvent search, essentially. So they're kind of going after Google, which is be an interesting challenge. But essentially, if you've used Perplexity, if you haven't, you should give it a go. So you can search, you can ask it questions, it'll give you results, but also it'll give you the source of the results as well. So Perplexity, what they're trying to do is clearly use lots of third-party data, but what you need to have is some kind of symbiotic relationship with these content producers and these publishers. So they've created Perplexity, the publishers program, and the idea is that they're going to share the revenue. Don't quite know exactly how or to what extent. It could be like a sort of think of Spotify essentially, and the sort of publishers in music. It's the same idea. And also think of Google AdSense, Google AdWords. Is how do you share the spoils? Because if you do and you're aligned, then things can grow faster. You don't all spend all day in court, essentially, which is what seems to be happening in terms of using other people's content. So what this is going to do, what you're going to see more of, these models is challenging this traditional idea of search and SEO. We said this last week as well. If your business is SEO, helping companies get found on the internet, essentially, you have to change your business model quite quickly and think about how you support companies to be found in a world where personal AI agents go and do the searching, and organizations have AI agents that hopefully, rather than shops and stores and websites, there's just a repository of information somewhere else on the internet that an AI agent can go and talk to and take a response back to its sort of human avatar, its human owner, if you want to call it that. So the world's going to change massively, and Perplexity are sort of leading the charge and trying to align all the people, all the stakeholders in that kind of ecosystem. Do you use Perplexity?
I used it a while ago. I haven't used it in a bit, to be honest. But I saw like how aggressively OpenAI were signing up all the publishers, like New York Times and different things like this. So it's going to be complex for these guys, basically, isn't it? With the kind of competition and the fragmentation of attention, because people aren't going to use multiple tools. People are going to just pick 2 or 3 things, basically. So, but obviously, it shows that's the way the tide is going.
But it also shows us, we talk about this quite a lot, is how Google got caught. It's been caught out, really. You would have thought, they would be doing this. So you're going to see lots of these large companies that have raised billions of pounds. We've already seen it in one that's got absorbed into Microsoft, in that they may not make it. So it's going to be really, but what they're doing though is innovating, and they're pushing the boundaries, which is good for all of us.
That's the key thing, because like Google's still making a lot of money from its model, right? Like so
Of course it is.
So it's not gonna, it's got no incentive to break that up. So let these other people try and do that, isn't it?
Which is why they sat on the transformer, which is the model, which is the T in GPT for so long. But we'll see how this plays out. But it's definitely worth, if you haven't used it, go and use Perplexity and use it. Try and use it for search and compare it to traditional search and see what you think. Right, moving on. So one of my favorite tools is Midjourney. So Midjourney have now released. I was still using 5.2 actually. They've just released 6.1. So I've been playing around with this, and it is mind blowing. It's just another leap forwards in image generation. So you've got improvements in image qualities, coherence, text accuracy. And one of the things they really struggle with is text. You've got this kind of it looked like Sanskrit when you try to ask it to say, please have an image. I did one this morning, please have an image of a person holding a bit like, the sort of cardboard sign guy, holding a cardboard sign that says this on it in this kind of font. And it's amazing. So you can now, and that was the hardest thing, because the thing about AIs is, we always say this, is that you don't want it to do half the job, because then a human has to get involved to finish it off. So if now you can have an image, and then within the image have text in a style that matches the image perfectly, but you don't have to do it. That is a game changer in terms of your ability to use this technology to be creative. So again, if you haven't used, now again, Midjourney is still stuck in Discord. They've got a website, but you've got to be quite a power user to get access to it. But I don't think it's going to be like that forever. And there is an API, which we're using it, aren't we, Alok?
There's no official.
Well, we're using Discord, aren't we?
Yeah, we make an API.
So it's a bit techy still, but it is a super powerful tool. If you want to create images, there's lots of other models you can use now. But I still think this is my favorite. All right, moving on. So OpenAI, we mentioned Perplexity. They have now launched we mentioned it last week as well, their search model. So although it's quite interesting, Microsoft invested in billions, it's 13 billion, at least over 10 billion in OpenAI. A lot of that's kind of a credits in terms of using its hyperscale cloud platforms, Azure. But they've now acknowledged that OpenAI is now a search competitor. So what these companies don't want is to be seen as getting too close together, because they might find the competition authorities turn up. But again, just like Perplexity, OpenAI are trying to reinvent search. So they're going after Google as well. So you've got Microsoft trying to do it. They're trying to embed AI using OpenAI technology into Bing. They're creating their own AI technology. So, you've seen Mustafa Solomon's turned up at Microsoft and head of their kind of AI group, which is a bit like Google DeepMind, I suppose, but the Microsoft version. They're creating their own technology. So again, this is good. You do not want this technology too centralized. It's just too powerful. So the more organizations that have the funding and the capability and the talent to develop this technology, the better for all of us. So it's good to see. It's good to see Microsoft acknowledging that they are competing and collaborating. So where that line blurs remains to be seen, but it's good news for all of us. Right. Now, as I say every week, we could spend an hour just going through all the new model launches. So we're not going to do that. There's just so many of them. So we've mentioned OpenAI GPT 4.0 with this extended output, 64K tokens. Runway Gen 3, image to video. If you haven't used that, that's mind blowing as well. So go to Runway, was it Runway ML? And to have a play with all the tools they have there. So if you've got if you've got a video of holiday and you're standing there working your drone, you want to take you out, but whatever it is, it's unbelievable. So I still find myself sometimes going to sort of Photoshop or other tools and filling around, and I kind of give up. And I remember Runway, I go to Runway and I get it done in like seconds. Super powerful. So they've launched a new model as well, Runway Gen 3 image to video. We mentioned Midjourney 6.1. Google have launched these. Google have got this smaller models that are open source called Gemma. So Gemma 2 models, there's a couple of those have been launched as well. Google Gemini, which is the bigger models that competes with OpenAI and things like Claude and everybody else. 1.5 Pro. Stable Diffusion have launched. This is something which we've touched upon, which is going to become more useful over time, especially in the world of as 3D printing evolves. But they've launched Stable Fast 3D. So this is image to a 3D asset. So again, I haven't done this yet, Alok. I keep talking about it. What I'd love to do is draw like a spanner or some tool, create it, turn it into an image using something like Runway or text to image or drawing to image, or like Stable, what's it called, Stable Doodle, something like that. Take that image, turn it into a 3D asset in a file format that can be used in 3D print, and then print it.
Yeah.
Now, one day when I've got nothing to do in a weekend, I'll go for that process. But that is amazing if you think about it. You can go from an idea, a concept in your head, a doodle, to a 3D printed asset. Well, in this case, let's just talk about 3D. So that's really quite exciting. And then there's a new range of models that have been launched by a lot of the people who come out of, I think, Stable Diffusion. They came out, a few of them, which is called Flux. So this is Flux AI and Flux One. And this is text to image. It's meant to be good as Midjourney. I had a quick look at it. I haven't really played with it too much. So again, lots of models, lots of investment, lots of things happening. It's good news for all of us. Moving on, one of the big players we often talk about is Adobe. So Adobe, if you're in business, at some point you're going to have to pay somebody to create some sort of vector art. Sort of, it's not realistic, it's not really cartoonish, but it's kind of art. You use a lot of graphics and branding as well, and it's super expensive. So what Adobe have now launched in Adobe Illustrator is the kind of democratize and simplify the creation of vector art. So it's kind of like, think of it as text to vector art. And this is actually, I think, quite interesting for a lot of organizations, because the cost again of creating imagery, it's not just the cost of it, it's the time it takes. And also the number of iterations. Often when you're trying to iterate something, and you're dealing with an illustrator, you kind of lose the will to live sometimes, in terms of you're not quite where it's not quite what you wanted, but you've just got to get it out. So you deal with it and go with it. Whereas now you can have literally infinite tweaks and iterations until you get what you want. So again, Adobe, they really are powering ahead in terms of AI and democratizing, making us all in creative. So I always say, I think in pictures, but I'm useless when it comes to drawing or getting them out of my head. Whereas now I'm not. I can think of anything, and literally with all these tools, I can literally get anything perfectly out of my head onto a screen, which I think is really quite powerful.
One of the challenges there is that these Adobe tools were always for professionals, essentially, right? And
Yeah.
the amount of training that many people have to go into is quite extensive. If you think about all the Adobe products, the amount of levels of training in different courses, and what's happening now is the skill level required to kind of get very good things output is just being flattened. So there's going to be a lot of impact in different areas, from this basically. But it just will mean that the average level of output will rise, basically, isn't it? I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that likes to know how things work. So I spent literally hours watching YouTube videos about. I became quite good at editing in Premiere Pro, and then I needed to use Adobe Audition for audio because I was making videos. Then I started to play with Photoshop, kind of gave up on it. But now, to be honest with you, with the technology, even like Adobe Enhance, where you can just take any audio, terrible audio, and OpenAI launching things as well, a sort of audio engine, where you can throw it in there and it cleans it up. I had one example, it was OpenAI, where they had a guy talking into a microphone with somebody blowing a leaf blower in his face. and it just took the leaf blower out perfectly. It's
Windows
unbelievable.
11.
So whether it's audio, whether it's video, whether it's images, you now can be a creative. So don't fear these tools, get involved and use them. Picture something in your head and just play around with these tools until you get it out. And you're going to find that, either you or your colleagues can now create the perfect output in terms of your creative needs rather than paying for it. Moving on. So Grok, this is not Elon Musk AI X Grok. This is Grok with a Q. This is quite interesting. So they are a chip manufacturer, the processor, and they're trying to challenge NVIDIA. So you've got CPUs, which is kind of the sort of the chip you're kind of used to. You put them in parallel so you can have more processing power. You've got GPUs, which kind of does a lot of things at once, essentially. And they have LPUs, which is slightly different. It's got slightly different use cases, but again, very powerful and very quick, especially in terms of things like speech, for example. It's super quick. So they're claiming that they just raised $640 million, just to give you another idea of how much money is going to these businesses. And they raised another huge amount of money quite recently. And they're claiming their chip has got 10 times the speed. And importantly, given where AI is going in terms of its energy consumption, 1/10 of the energy consumption of conventional AI processors, GPUs. So this is going to be faster, more energy efficient, reducing the cost. And what we're finding, Alok, isn't it, is that we're still developing AI agents for our clients, and it's not the agent, our development. It's sometimes the cost of accessing the model. Sometimes it's got, well, where's the ROI? And what you're seeing is this cost is falling very, very quickly. So the ROI is increasing sort of, well, not quite exponentially yet, but pretty quickly over time. So having developments like this, where you can speed up the processing, reduce the power, means that accessing these models is going to become cheaper, which means compared to sort of, say, a human workforce, your ROI using virtual workers, AI agents, is going to increase.
Absolutely.
Right, moving on. One of my favorite topics at the moment is robots. So Figure AI. I've just launched Figure O2, and I like this one because what you're seeing is you saw these kind of quite clumsy looking, Boston Robotics robots for quite some time, although they've now launched the next generation, which is pretty impressive too. If you go and look at Boston Dynamics, the next generation of humanoid robots, and look at Figure, and even Tesla to some extent, and look at Figure. Now, Figure is partly backed by OpenAI, so it's using OpenAI generalist models to actually operate them. These are pretty slick looking. They're like the iPod of robots. They're slick looking. They are very much humanoid, but they look like they've moved on several generations. Like Boston Dynamics was using they're now 100% electric in terms of the motors.
Hydraulics before.
Yeah, there's no more. As I was looking for. Thank you, Alan. There's no hydraulics in there anymore. So they're slicker, and which Alok keeps reminding me, they're cheaper. So these things are, I was saying like 250 grand, right? These things are, 30 to 50, maybe 100,000, depending on what you need.
The figure will be 100 to 150, but you can get humanoids for between 100 and even 20, isn't it?
Yes, it's the price of a not very nice car. So if you can finance that, you're down to, I don't know, £1,500 a month, which starts to compete with the cost of humans, and that cost is only going in one direction. So keep an eye on that. If you haven't seen the videos, just Google a Figure AI O2 product launch, and you'll get to see the video there, and it's pretty impressive. Right, so we're going to move into our theme now. We're talking about AI agents and memory and the power of that. And if you're new to our podcast, then please sign up for our AI Insider newsletter. We send it out once a week. It's got insights, tips, and sort of information on how to build an AI-assisted organization. We have our AI Training Academy. So whether it's prompt engineering, whether it's content creation, whether it's just basically leveling up your sort of senior leadership team, we've got a course there for everybody. And we've got a resource center, which increasingly is becoming crammed with demos, white papers, ideas, use cases. So it's worth signing up to access our resource center and just access. We've probably got about 5 or 6 white papers now. But importantly, quite a few demos. And some of the demos we're going to talk about now, you can see in there as well. So the theme this week, Alok, is something you've been working on, which is AI. Well, it's memory, but also how we use it with our AI call agents.
Exactly. So I think what we're starting to kind of do is you were talking with the Figure robots and with different things about how you're approaching, let's call it the same sort of price point or lower price point than like a human team member to do certain tasks. But obviously with AI, you not only have like the cost effectiveness, you can also have like beyond human capabilities. So for example, imagine you've got like a team of like 15 people and they're all answering the phone, and different people phone up at time to time, like different customers. Like agent number 16 and agent number 12 won't know the same conversation that happened. They won't be able to like discuss different things. They won't know the preference that customer had. With AI agents and with memory, it basically can remember all the conversations and it can access any information from within there very straightforwardly. So the frustrations that people have in customer support is like, I'm talking to this person doesn't know anything about me. They don't know about the details previously. And also many people sometimes don't type in and write all the notes, which they should do after having calls, because people are busy and they're just answering the phone. So the beauty with AI agents, the way it works essentially is every single phone call, every single conversation, it's got a full memory and history of it. It can also extract any useful information from it, like when they last booked an appointment, what their order status was, what are the preferences they might have. And then when they phone back, it knows their number, so it can greet them by name. So it'll be like, hi, Greg, or hi, Piers. And then it knows exactly about it. And if you said, oh, we were discussing something about Thursday sometime, you say, yeah, you requested to book an appointment on Thursday. Is it Thursday at 2:00? Was there anything I can help you with? So this becomes really quite helpful, because the business is able to offer a personalized assistant or personalized customer support for their customers, basically, right? And that's where this starts, and just kind of expand it out. This same AI agent we're talking about on the phone, but it could also interact by SMS or by WhatsApp. So you could have a phone call straight, immediately saying, I'd like to book an appointment for Tuesday at 2 p.m. Hang up the phone. Then you drop a text message saying, sorry, I need to move this appointment. Can I move it to here? And again, it knows your number, and it can move that, have the details there. So what this leads into is like a very slick and very understanding customer experience, which then obviously means that you can kind of like recommend better products or have different elements within there, basically. So let's talk about some of the use cases for that, Piers, basically. But
well, just before you go on that, so I think people might hear that and they think, well, somebody calling in, it recognizes the number and says hello with their name. So what? So yeah, okay, I get that. But you've got to appreciate the power of collecting all that unstructured information in terms of conversations, WhatsApp messages, text messages, whatever it might be. It's images, even it can be multimodal. I mean, people can send an image. You can then look at the image, because AIs can see essentially. It can describe the image in huge detail, as much detail as you actually tell it to, and then store that detail about the image as well as the image as well. And then what you have then is perfect recall. So no human has perfect recall. No humans, they go on holiday, they're away, they forget things. We all know if you've got CRM systems that they forget to fill things out, the notes aren't very good, somebody picks it up, they don't understand what they're talking about, what they've written. This is perfect recall for anything that's been captured in those conversations.
Exactly. And the thing is, like, imagine, for example, you're having a customer meeting, team meeting, like you're saying, okay, these 50 customers, we need 10 pieces of information from each of these 50 customers. Where are we with each person, basically, right? Because the AI agent would have done all the phone calls, also would be aware of all the emails and any SMS messages. It could say exactly, you're at this status, you're here, you're missing this is happening there, which means you can automate more follow-up and do things from there. I think the power of this is like when you're having many, many conversations in parallel, like, reactivating customers or trying to engage people or discussing, complex sales, which might have different stages. Like they need to get planning permission first, and then they need to, have a part of a building constructed. Like the AI can understand all of this, and it means that you've got like a much, much more powerful, much more effective solution, essentially, isn't it?
Yeah, so go for the use cases then.
Yeah, so basically, one of the main areas would be customer service and support. So the whole point there is like you can have instant history to customer history for like how many times have they phoned up before? What have they ordered in the past? Have they had complaints in the past? Have they had returns in the past? All those things you can have access to and understand. And even if they've ordered something, like when it was shipped, what the order details are, when it would be available for them. But then also you could do real-time suggestion. Like, we've noticed that you've ordered 6 of these in the past. Actually, if you joined our membership plan or you joined our subscription model, it would be cheaper for you. Is that something of interest to you, basically, right? You've got the combination of perfect understanding and also perfect kind of like optimized recommendation, because many people would write a script for their team members to do, but the people won't follow it, basically, right? So you have to have the two balances within there. Other areas could be outbound engagement. So for example, personalized outreach based on previous interactions and preferences. So for example, imagine you're phoning a particular business and you know that like Jake is the manager. every time you phone, it could be like, okay, can I speak to Jake, please? Or you can get more information about it. So it means that you build a picture of who's there within the organization. Some AIs, when they call people, you could have a phone call with the AI immediately after you hung up, and it'll treat you the same in terms of like, it'll treat you like a stranger because it doesn't know who you are and it doesn't remember a past conversation, basically. With these ones, it would know all that stuff, basically. So it would be able to, like, say, okay, we discussed 3 months ago about this and you were concerned about this. How is that for you now, basically? That's a much more warm conversation rather than like, you phoned me 3 months ago and asked me the same question, you phoned me 3 months out later and asked the same questions. It doesn't fit necessarily, isn't it? Right. So
But also, just going back to, you mentioned scripts just a few moments ago. So why do you have scripts, right? So you have scripts so that people follow a particular route. There might have decision trees in it, so they can move in different directions. The tone of voice, they don't forget the cross sell or the upsell. It's because humans forget, basically. Whereas you can have essentially, it's not a script, it's dynamic. And what you're capturing as well are things that humans don't really, which are things like sentiment analysis, which you can score. Imagine this is, I'm making this one up, right? But imagine you have conversation, you always put in there, you try and find something out about customers, about the hobbies, what the holiday, whether they like going on holiday. At the end of the year, you create an AI generated, Christmas card that's all about their particular hobby, as long as you hopefully get it right. But there's information like that which you just can't do. So what this allows you to do is have, as Alex said, really personal engagement, personalized conversations. But eventually down the road, use your CRM system for the basics, but have this overlay, and we'll come on to that, so that you can actually create really, really engaging and personal content.
exactly. And this is like the next part we call a CRM enhancement. This basically makes all of the invisible visible, like all of the conversations, all the discussions, all of the preferences, lightly suggested or not lightly suggested, would be captured within there. The number of times you've had like phone calls and people have just said something as an offhand comment, people would not be writing all those things down, basically. They're too busy focusing on what they're doing. So this then gives you access to everything. And then if you're a human team member, you could actually just search and say, okay, for Tabitha Jones, basically, right? Like show me a summary of her last conversation. It will show you the summary with the key points, with the different elements. So you always have access to this information. So, sometimes when team members leave the business, all of the kind of relationships, and I know that Mrs. Jones likes this, and I know understands stuff, all of that is lost, basically, right? But with AI systems like this, it's not lost because it's always there. And then if a new person joins, they can say, I know that you like this, in this way. And even though you never met that person before, they're like, well, they know me, isn't it? Right. You already have a much better relationship with that business, basically, in that area.
Yeah, and I think, and we keep talking internally about this, I think that this is a huge opportunity to augment your existing CRM. I don't care what you use, whether Zoho, Salesforce, Dynamics, it can be anything essentially. HubSpot, doesn't matter. But what they're flat databases, really. You're trying to extract nuggets of information, first name, last name, email. You've got, you might use things, software which basically tracks what people are doing on your website. But it's pretty basic, essentially. It's using logic. Whereas now what you can do is have an overlay of your CRM where you've got all this unstructured, this sort of gold dust, this unstructured information, and you can then use that in tandem with your CRM to create these personalized messages and become super engaging. And I think that that's something that every organization that wants to get ahead can do this now. I don't think the CRMs are going to try and do this, but they're not doing it yet at all. And it's never going to be done exactly the way you want it to. So your AI agent, essentially. Yeah, exactly. You're absolutely right. Well, SaaS is for people, isn't it? SaaS is just lots of things where you're going to move levers and move things around. They're not particularly well automated. That's why you have things like Make and Zapier. So what your AI agent does is, in real time, has all this context and does what you want it to create these engaging experiences. And that's how you drive revenue, improve customer experience, and reduce churn. There's lots of sectors, like I talked to a friend of mine about mobile the other day, where it's quite hard. I've been in mobile. I had a £50 million revenue business in mobile, but it's quite hard to get new business because everybody's got one. In fact, everyone's got 1.2 mobiles. So your best chance of retaining and generating revenue is as you add new customers. Good churn in mobiles for 8% a year, bad 20. So if you can reduce your churn by 1 or 2 points, by, they were saying that in CRM, you'll notify somebody to go and call somebody when it's end of their contract, but they forget or they're busy. AIs don't forget, and they have almost infinite sort of hours of working hours, essentially. So those calls are never not going to be made. So it's incredible where if you would just churn a few points, we all know that your revenue grows a lot faster.
Exactly. And like you said, like just because you try and phone somebody doesn't mean you can reach them. You know, the AI can try it on the weekend or the evenings, and you can reach the people at different times. So all of those things can help massively. Then you've also got compliance and risk management. So for example, like having the AI able to analyze everything, spot, you know, if there's potential compliance issues in conversations or things that people said, and it's got full record keeping for regulatory purposes, and early detection of dissatisfaction, because you can spot complaints, issues, different things like this. And so the whole point here is you can start essentially, like, you know, like with Google AdWords, you've got pay-per-click, essentially, isn't it? Like you can evolve into a kind of a pay-per-call model, essentially, right? You know, where it's like very cost effective to reach many people, to reactivate them, to re-engage them, prevent them from churning, or to upsell your new service and things like this. And it's just a question of like, how many people do you want to reach? How much insights we're going to gain from those people? Because each conversation will give you new insights, which you can then go back and test, you know, customize a tailored model with, or a tailored offer with. So I think all of this just kind of leads to one business which is leveraging this versus another business with a team of 10. You know, you're going to start to see different advantages, not just from a cost structure, but also from a kind of productivity and capability way as well.
So what you're creating is almost like with each touch to the customer, whether it's multimodal, however that's done, you're creating like almost like a knowledge base that can be used in real time and in ways in which you couldn't capture or use that information before. So it's really, really powerful. So I think memory is going to be key. And again, we built this into our AI agents, and it's making a huge difference actually, because as Alok said, the most important thing is that every new conversation isn't a new conversation. It's a continuation of all the previous conversations, images, text messages, and WhatsApp messages you've received. Anything to add?
No.
So that's AI call agents and memory. So memory, having a workforce with perfect recall is, I don't need to say, I don't need to explain it, incredibly powerful. So AI of the week, we do AI of the week as well. So I've been playing around with it. Some of them can repeat quite often because they evolve over time. So obviously our AI call agent with memory is my AI of the week, but I have been playing with Midjourney 6.1. And if you want to create images or get these images, like I said, out of your head onto the screen, it is incredibly powerful. So what I did, I took quite a few prompts, because obviously you have a history, quite a few prompts that I was creating images using the 5.2 model. And I've been using it in, I don't know why I went from 5.2 to 6.1, in 6.1. And there's a quality, you know, of the images compared to what I was getting before has just moved on. So definitely go and have a play with Midjourney 6.1. As you said as well, if you haven't done it yet, go and use Perplexity as well, and just see how that works for you in terms of understanding how search is changing. So this is the AI Assisted Organization podcast. If you're new to it, sign up to our AI newsletter, sign up for our resource center. We've got lots of white papers in there. We've got demos. You can actually see the AI call agent in there with the memory demo as well. And we ask you, if you like the podcast, if you find it helpful, added any value whatsoever, please subscribe, obviously, but also leave us a review, ideally on Apple. It really does help us. We've got a few great reviews on there. We think we do add value, which is why we keep doing it. If we didn't, we'd probably stop. But we think it adds value to a lot of people. We're going through all the AI news, all that noise, so you don't have to, and bringing you the AI news for business and a theme each week. So that's it for this week. This is the AI Assisted Organization podcast with myself, Piers Linney, and Dr. Alok Shukla. We'll be in the same place, same time-ish, depending where we are, when we're traveling, next week. See you then.